So, Dragon Age The Veilguard. I know I'm late to the party when it comes to Veilguard news, but I wanted to wait until I learned more about the game before I jumped into it to give some of my thoughts about what we've seen in the game so far. I'm going to keep the intro short and sweet this time and just get into this thing. Now, from what I understand, the game takes place after the Inquisition, and I think it was a good idea to continue the overarching story, especially if there's more to explore within it. Of course, the downside of this is that it's going to make it a little bit harder for new players to get into the game, and they will be missing out on context from previous games if they decide to jump into Veilguard. But if you don't mind that, then I say go ahead and jump into it. But otherwise, you might want to look at the other games first. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. You know, I jumped into Inquisition first, but now I'm going back and checking out the other games as well, just to have that knowledge of past events. The plot centers around the protagonist known as Rook, and they will lead a group of companions through the wonderful world of Thedas, or the trenches of Thedas, whatever works for you. These companions include a scout, a necromancer, a detective, a dragon hunter, a warden, a veil jumper, and an assassin. The necromancer sounds interesting compared to everything else, because we're usually fighting the undead, but now we got someone who can control the dead on our team. But I do gotta point out that Harding's back, and this time she's a party member. Nice to see she's got a little bit of a promotion. Players will be able to choose between one of the three classes, Rogue, Mage, or Warrior, and then specialize within that class. I saw that Rook is able to dual wield, and I'm gonna be all over that. I love the slice, what can I say? The confirmed specializations are Evoker, Deathcaller, and Spellblade for mages, Duelist, Saboteur, and Veil Jumper for rogues, and Slayer, Reaper, and Champion for warriors. I've been hearing folks talk about Veilguard's character creator, and apparently it's supposed to be extensive. Extensive to the point that it was used to create most of the NPCs in the game. We've seen how that can go in the past. Look at Martin Burns. Look at this man's face. But it's 2024. Customization has come a long way. There's a lot to go over, so I decided to pick out a few things. There are 4 races to choose from: elves, Qunari, humans, and dwarves. Veilguard allows for more detailed looks for the races and the ability to choose pronouns if you want, and different body types. We'll have 40 different skin complexions to choose from, and you can make the skin tones rugged, smooth, youthful, or speckled. You can change the skin hue to cool, neutral, warm. You can add undertone to those skin tones, and there's even a melanin slider. There is a vitiligo slider and sliders for your forehead, brow, cheeks, jaw, chin, larynx, and scalp. And you can even customize things like how bloodshot your character's eyes are, and even add things like cauliflower ear. Hey, now I can feel like Randy Couture. You'll select the first and last name, and you'll have 4 voices to choose from: English masculine, English feminine, American masculine, or American feminine. Matt Rhodes, the art director for the Dragon Age series, said that the technology has finally caught up to their ambition. I just hope that ambition doesn't equal 100 gigs worth of space. You also get to choose a faction to join. You can join the Grey Wardens, who are making a return to the series, the Antivan Crows, I hope I said that right, the Morn Watch, the Shadow Dragons, the pirate-themed Lords of Fortune, and the Veil Jumpers. It seems like BioWare wanted to avoid having us collect all these MacGuffins before we can save the world, and instead lean towards factions that want to help you, but they have their own realistic challenges and problems in front of them, so that narratively, it would make sense for them to help you out later on, especially if you helped them in the past. The creative director for Dragon Age, John Epler, says that gameplay-wise, each of our classes has a specialization, and each of them is tied to a faction. But beyond that, each faction has a companion, as well as people we're calling agents, ancillary, who exist as the faces of these factions. We didn't just want to say, here's the Grey Wardens, go deal with them. We wanted characters within that faction who are sympathetic, who can see and become the face of the faction, so that even if there are moments where the faction as a whole may be on the outs with you, these characters are still with you. They still got your back. The overall message for Veilguard is that you're not alone. You have a whole faction who's willing to ride for you. And when shit hits the fan, and we all know it will, that's going to lead to some epic moments. The art style for this game is different than past games as well. It's more colorful than past games. I've heard it be compared to Fortnite's art style and a Disney movie. But to keep it 100 with you guys, I don't mind this. It could be the fact that I'm still new to the series, but to me, it doesn't look bad. It still looks like Dragon Age in spirit, and while I do like the rustic, darker look that Dragon Age has had to this point, I think Inquisition nails it in terms of that atmosphere, but I'm going to be open-minded. I don't think it's going away from Dragon Age, but simply BioWare trying something different. And it looks good, I gotta be honest. And I believe that as long as the gameplay is good, I don't think that's going to be much of a problem. And if the art style drives new players to the series, then I don't think that's a bad thing. Speaking of gameplay, Veilguard will be different from the other titles in terms of party control. It's more similar to Mass Effect in the sense of pulling up an ability wheel and instructing your companions to use whatever powers you choose. You won't be able to control your companions in this game, and that's a bit of a bummer. One of the better aspects of Dragon Age is that you have that liberty. But on the other hand, if you've played Mass Effect before, you should be able to get used to this type of gameplay rather quickly, but I'm gonna miss having control over the battlefield. I see that your health potions are tied to the directional buttons if you're using a controller, and I do like that instead of having to go to the wheel. The skill tree for Rook looks extensive. It's much wider than their companions, but they'll have enough abilities to hang with you, and you'll be able to synergize abilities with them to level your enemies. Rock's teammates will each have 5 abilities, but players will have to decide up to 3 of them to take into combat, but these abilities can be switched for one another, so they have some versatility. But Rook's tree? They have passive abilities, combat abilities, and class specializations, which will allow you to unlock new combat abilities. This is how the skill tree is laid out. The large circle is for the class, the diamonds are for the abilities. The medium circles are for major passives and ability upgrades. The small hexagon are for traits, and the small circle is for minor passives and stat boosts. Every time you rank up a companion's relationship level, you unlock a skill point to spend specifically on that companion. This is how you unlock new combat abilities. But as far as how the gameplay looks, it does look nice. The movements look really fluid, and the character they're using really appeals to me because I'm using a dual-wielding rogue right now. It definitely looks more action-based over tactical-based, and I'm sure that's a bit disappointing to fans. That's one of the things I liked about the game myself, but if I end up liking this new style, it is what it is, you know? I care more about if the game is fun to play. An article about the difficulty options for the game was released as I was creating a script for this video, and BioWare is definitely going in when it comes to customization. You have Storyteller for those who want a more story-based experience, Adventurer, which balances story and combat, but there's also a difficulty called Nightmare, which is the hardest difficulty. And the kicker with this one is if you decide that, yeah, these guys are kicking my ass, let me drop the difficulty a bit, well, too bad, you're stuck with it. And at my current skill level, I say hell nah to that. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have an option called Unbound, where you can customize your gameplay experience however you like. There's an option for aim assistance and auto-aiming. You can adjust your combat timing and make parrying easier or harder, whatever feels right for you. And you can even change how much damage enemies do to you, or change how much damage you do to them. And you even can enable a no death option, so you don't have any death setbacks. Now this is pretty cool because you can create your ideal experience. An easy option, a middle option, a hard option, and a custom option. I do hope there's also a casual and hardened-like option, something that's a little below or above the adventurer difficulty, then it would be perfect. I see that the dialogue wheel is back, and I call this the BioWare special because this has been a mainstay in their games for a long time now. But apparently BioWare has made some tweaks to it. The wheel has been tweaked so that it now indicates the kind of response you'll get instead of just paraphrasing what the character will say, which clears up the issue of players expecting their player to say something and getting something completely different, which is a welcome change. That is something that will be useful, especially with the more important choices. I see that Varric and Solus are back, which is nice, and I believe that Solus will have a significant role in this game. In the gameplay trailer, this man is tripping. He's performing some ritual, and he is determined to complete it. He is not listening to anybody. I wonder what the consequences will be because of this. But that's what I wanted to share with you guys. Veilguard looks like it could be a fun game, but it does seem a lot different than past ones, and I do think that is something that the Dragon Age community is grappling with at the moment. This is the first Dragon Age game in 10 years, so expectations are wide at the moment, And we can criticize or praise the game now, but the reality is that this game is going to have to be experienced. And I'm willing to see what BioWare is selling. What are y'all cooking with this one? I, like everyone else, will be waiting to see what new news comes out about it. But thank you guys for watching. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.
DJ Sonic Freak.